You're watching Truth versus Hype. We're in Chennai, where as the waters have receded, at least for now, the focus is on tracing the roots of the crisis that hit the city. Was it a natural disaster as the government claims, or was it, as more and more are arguing, a man-made disaster? Over the next 30 minutes, how reckless planning and unchecked growth and the familiar proximity between developers and the political class may have exacerbated Chennai's crisis, and how on the ground there appears to be very little evidence of lessons being learnt. Chennai's day or days of reckoning now seen under a new light. Every single official argument being questioned, even the premise that this was the worst ever rains.
This time the rainfall in Chennai, I think it after so many years, even in tsunami period also not this much of rain.
See, rains keep on coming every year. Monsoon in Chennai is fixed October to December, and some years it will be slightly more, some years it will be slightly less, and there has been no cloud burst at all. So rain is a normal happening every year.
One of the main reasons for the floods, argue environmentalists and activists, is the slow choking of Chennai's water bodies, both man-made tanks as well as natural marshes and creeks. In fact, according to the government's own statistics, the size of Chennai's 19 lakes has dropped by 50% in the past 2 decades. The most striking instance from South Chennai, from neighborhoods like Velachery.
That's the one that you see on the
At the southern end of Velachery, the Pallikaranai Marsh.
It was a marsh called the Pallikaranai Marsh.
It's here we meet Jayashree Venkateshan.
It's a man-made flood in Chennai.
It's a man-made flood. You're saying that?
Yeah, that's one line. Yes. I mean, there's nothing to hide. Yeah, nothing to hide at all.
Once 50 square kilometers, these marshes acted like a sponge to soak up rainwater. But as these pictures show, it's only a fraction of what it used to be.
This marshland has shrunk massively in the last 30 years. From
What's the size now?
It's about 4.34 square kilometers and shrinking rapidly.
So that's literally down to less than 10% of its original size.
That's right. And disappearing fast.
The problem traces its roots to a colonial rule.
Unfortunately, a large part of this marsh was historically, and when I say history, I mean late 1700s onwards, designated as a wasteland.
Okay.
This is a
By
wetland
the British?
by the British, and we simply followed that.
And that's seen the steady erosion of these wetlands.
What we see here is a resettlement colony.
This is a resettlement
It's
colony.
a resettlement colony. This colony is a result of something that happened within the core of the city.
Right.
There was this MRTS, the Mass Rapid Transport System, that was made, and people who were living in the midst of that
They were
had to be
displaced and brought
relocated
here.
here.
Right.
So this once it happened, it blocked the natural flow of water.
This is one.
This is one. The other is on the eastern periphery.
Yes.
You have the IT corridor. The corridor where, IT joins.
That's this road that's running here.
That's running parallel to this on the other side of the wetland, which is where you see a maximizing of the presence of top industries, industry-related activities such as hotels and stuff like that. It's a corridor, a designated corridor. That's the second kind of a thing. Because it became the sought-after hub for IT, you also had a maximizing of residential areas.
Okay.
That's the one that you see on the southern periphery.
That building, that for example, is probably a residential building.
Residential
building.
building.
Residential building. Okay.
These are residential buildings, gated communities and stuff like that, and allied infrastructure like
So
schools.
these are all coming up in the marsh buffer
around
area.
the marsh, yes, around the marsh and around the 32 wetlands that buffer the marsh.
So just from where we're standing, we're seeing two major encroachments onto the Pallikaranai Marsh. The first is this road that was built to connect one part of South Chennai, Velachery, to the IT corridor, and this road has effectively cut the marsh into two halves. So you have one half of the marsh here, and then if the camera pans, you've got the other half of the marsh there. And this was one big reason, by cutting it in half, that worsened the flooding. The other big problem that we can also see from here is this garbage dump. Now this is South Chennai's main garbage dump. Cities need garbage dumps, yes, but here the land that was allotted for this dump was only 30 acres. Over a period of time, it has grown in size, and you can see that best when you look at a satellite picture of its growth like a cancerous tumor. It's grown to almost 7 times its size to 200 acres. The estimate was to only dump about 1,000 metric tons of garbage here per day, but experts say that that amount has gone up to almost 4,800 metric tons of garbage that's being dumped here a day, encroaching into this water body and exacerbating the flood situation. The combined impact for all to see. What is unfolded in South Chennai is true across the city. The areas of North Chennai, for instance, which witnessed the worst flooding, could be traced to some extent to the slow erosion of its water bodies.
Now, the shrinking and the encroachment around Chennai's lakes and water bodies and the attendant problems of flooding are not just limited to south. Here in the north, we stand next to Ambattur Lake, one of the larger freshwater lakes in the city, which saw some heavy flooding on its southern side. Now, as scientists and activists point out, the development in this region and the shrinking of this lake happened much earlier, 40 to 50 years ago. But what they do say is that the interconnected nature of these lakes like Korattur, Ambattur, which flow into the river of Kuam and eventually into the Bay of Bengal, has been hampered by the surrounding construction and the industrial estates.
City officials only partly accept this.
If we don't respect nature, nature has a way of coming back to us.
You're admitting, you're accepting that.
No, as I say, I mean, it's not happened overnight. It's been happening for decades together, and collectively as a society, I think we need to step back and look at what all this development has been for.
They claim that the core areas of the city drained out faster, and the real crisis was the newer, fast expanding areas of the city which have poor drainage networks.
Like if you see the green portion, these were areas that were added to Chennai Corporation in the year 2011.
Until now they were outside of the umbrella.
Yes. So at that point of time, these areas saw developments, but unfortunately infrastructure was not up to the mark. Now that they are part of Chennai, we are seriously now investing huge amounts of sums into infrastructure development, including drainage.
But given the scale of flooding, it's not a tenable argument, say activists.
What is more worrying is that the peri-urban areas, which have been brought into the ambit of the cities, are bearing the brunt of water, excess water flowing from the central areas of the city to these areas. And you're just transferring the problem. You're transferring the water and transferring the problem.
Legal activists say it's not as if the slow choking of the city went unchallenged. But they say the courts also let them down.
In the early 90s, in fact, a group went to court and said the Tamil Nadu Housing Board, which is the state-owned provider of housing for lower middle income groups, reclaimed significant portions of fairly large lakes in the city and first plotted out lands and then built tenements on these. Even at that time, people went to court and said, this is nonsensical, these are World Bank funded schemes, but yet these projects went on. I mean, all institutions, including the judiciary, were remiss in ensuring that this didn't happen.
It's not also as if warnings weren't given. Here, for instance, is a detailed blueprint for the city pointing out the risks, commissioned by the state government, yet ignored.
At the request of the Chennai Corporation and the Government of Tamil Nadu, supported by Government of India, Ministry of Urban Development, we gave a city development plan covering almost all aspects of development of Chennai metropolitan area in 2009. Flood is not just that doesn't come from above. What happens is we have very clearly told them that you have an ecological mapping of the city. We had done it in the report, and do not do the development construction activities only accordingly. High rise will be allowed only in certain areas, medium rise, medium density is allowed in certain areas, low density, low rise will be allowed, certain areas no construction at all. But reverse has been taking place, with the result the natural drain has completely choked. Any amount of drainage, artificial drainage, man-made drainage cannot solve the problem.
The floods come at a time when Tamil Nadu is a year from elections, a time for political point scoring. Here is the DMK's supposed heir apparent out in the field.
முதலமைச்சரே உடனடியாக அதெல்லாம் பார்த்து நிவாரண பணியை வேகப்படுத்தியிருக்கணும், முடுக்கி விட்டிருக்கணும். ஆனால் அவர் எந்த பணியிலும் ஈடுபடவில்லை என்பது நான் மட்டும் இல்லை, தமிழகத்தில் இருக்கக்கூடிய எல்லா கட்சி தலைவர்களும் பொதுமக்களும் நன்றாகவே உணர்வார்கள்.
But will a change in government make a difference?
The Mr. Stalin gave a very big statement. We are going to change Chennai as a Singapore. But nothing they have done. They made some bridges, unwanted place they constructed the bridges, and not in a proper way they constructed. And all the roads which are in DMK period was made, it's not also good.
Sir, even in your time, people say that this kind of encroachment was going on. All these big buildings were coming up, IT corridors were coming up. Again, don't you also become responsible for the disaster?
டெஃபரெண்டாக நான் ஒத்துக்கிறேன், இல்லைன்னு சொல்லலை. அது வந்து சில வந்து டெவலப்மெண்ட்டுக்காக சில ஸ்கீம்ஸ் எல்லாம் பண்ண வேண்டியிருக்கு. அப்படி பண்ணும்போது அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி அந்த ஸ்கீமையும் கரெக்ட் பண்ணியிருக்கணும். அதை வந்து திமுக ஆட்சி இருந்தப்போ ஓரளவுக்கு நாங்கள் பண்ணணும். ஆனால் இப்போ இந்த ஆட்சியில் வந்து எதையுமே செய்யலை.
Many say that when it comes to the lack of urban planning foresight, there isn't much difference between the two parties. And given the links between the political interests and those of real estate, it would be naive to think otherwise.
Land is something which attracts corrupt people. And so there is corruption in this, there is bad planning in this, and a lot of the bad planning is also influenced by corruption.
No better proof of the intersection of bipartisan politics and influence than this high-end complex of apartments known as Chennai's Manhattan. Its proximity to the sea meant that for years it witnessed no real construction.
This is called MRC Nagar, which is right on the beach, hardly about 200 meters from the high tide line, and it is also right on the banks of river Adayar. On both counts, construction is totally prohibited.
That changed when in 1995 Jayalalitha hosted the lavish wedding of her foster son on a plot of land here. Soon after, the clearances came and high-rises like these built on the former wedding venue.
Here we have backwaters behind and Marina Beach on the other side, and palace on our left-hand side.
Okay, so this has come up like right literally just next to the water. This is the sea, is it, that we're seeing here behind us?
Yeah, this is the sea, Marina Beach.
Okay. And when did this building come up?
It's in 2004. This is where Jayalalitha's adopted son marriage happened.
Adopted son marriage happened.
And this place was the cricket ground before.
And then after that, these buildings came up.
Yeah, slowly. Initially, it was only 40 houses in MRC Nagar. Slowly, the buildings came up.
Under the law, you can show the existence of a road to bypass coastal restrictions. In this case, abrupt proof of a pre-existing road was produced in court. So as we can see here from these towers, this is right along the coast, and of course one of the reasons that it was given the permission was because they said there was a historic road that ran along this coast, and you can actually see the remnants of that road, or you can't really even make out frankly whether there's a road here at all. It just seems to be just a strip of sand here.
If you see the Singapore also, they have constructed a lot of even the airport is on the sea. But they are planned in such a way, and they constructed, and they're expanding, the Singapore is expanding on the sea only. And in Tamil Nadu, now actually what happens is, for so many years we didn't have that problem. Now people started realizing that we have to take care of those in future.
Ironically, one of the tallest buildings in this complex is by True Value Homes, owned by the family of K.M. Nehru, a former DMK minister.
Don't accuse on single party, sir. In every political party in Tamil Nadu, they are very good to assess with real estate developers. That is the true picture. Is politicians all with the full surrounded by these real estate developers and brokers.
Almost all the builders have got political connections, and as far as this aspect of urban development, real estate development is concerned, there is no distinction between party A or party B. Both parties are the same.
The irony is that Chennai, for all its growth, hasn't been as dramatically altered as a Bombay or a Bangalore, but it is on a cusp, positioning itself as an IT and a commerce hub. But the question is, these rains which presented a wake-up call, because those ambitions would have to be faced up with the realities of nature. Are the stakeholders who are charting the new rise of Chennai paying any attention?
Not far from Chennai's IT hub, the back streets of MCN Nagar, 10 days after the floods. IT professionals who live in rented homes struggling to make it to office.
I am working for Accenture.
So a lot of people here work for different IT companies. This flooding has been like this for how many days now?
It's been around 10 days.
10 days.
Yeah.
Water has not gone down.
It's not.
Every year, this one problem is every year.
So how are people going to work in this situation?
We are getting shoes in the cover and we are going there and we are shifting there to the shoes.
And yet the IT industry continues to rapidly expand on the very wetlands that may have reduced the impact of the floods. So we've come further south along Chennai's floodplains, and it appears that the story is the same. Here is another massive IT park called Corte City, and you can see the big IT companies with their headquarters right alongside another marsh. They're right on the marsh, and you can see one on this side as well along the water. In fact, this huge complex, as we drove in, clearly bore the brunt of the rainfall. There were cars that were driving through puddles of water as they came in.
Most of the land that's so-called encroached
Yes.
actually are revenue lands or Porambok lands, which are supposed to be sold to the public or whatever. So where is the plan, where is the micro plan, where is the hydrology plan that says water will come from here to here, do not build here, monitoring systems, punishment system, etc., etc. So if I'm given permission to build here and I build it, I cannot be held responsible for 100-year rain data.
At the eastern edge of the city, Tamil Nadu's Autoharp, one of the drivers of the state economy, they too were impacted by the floods. But as these satellite pictures show, many of the plants are right along crucial water bodies that supply the city.
If you take the example of Oragadam, which used to be a sleepy rural area with Budan lands, these lands were taken away forcibly using the police. And there were lakes, there were reserve forests, and they were handed out to Renault Nissan, Ford, to Daimler, and automobile industrial hubs have come up over there, and Chennai wants to be the Detroit of South India, ironically. But those areas have also been affected by floods, especially the access routes to those areas have been affected by floods.